Hello everyone, hope you're well. I'm here today to film another video and it's part 2 of my Voltron weapon creations. Obviously it's taken me a lot of time to actually sit down and do this, and that's honestly because I've just had other projects to work on and a lot bigger props to make. The big convention that happens in the middle of the year here kind of got me quite busy, and I took a very crazy project that I wanted to do, and that was my Illyria cosplay. I've got some other videos up that show the process of making her if you're curious. But otherwise I don't have any other conventions coming up soon, so I can actually sit down, focus on getting some of my cosplays that I put to the side and working on those again, and that does include my Voltron ones. And so for this video I'll be going through the process of finishing up his Bayard and also his little knife. So I just did a really rough outline. Basically I just want to smooth all of the edges, and I'm going to do that using the Dremel. Now I mentioned before that you can kind of get away without using a Dremel. You know, you can cut it down with a Stanley knife and then sand it down, but honestly a Dremel just makes the job so much easier and so much smoother as well. And I would definitely recommend investing in one if you enjoy making cosplay props. Please remember to definitely wear goggles when you're working with a Dremel and foam, and also a safety mask as well if you think you'll need it. Just a few things with dremeling. Please remember to be careful when using it. I can't tell you the number of times I've accidentally sanded myself instead of the weapon I'm trying to make. So just be careful. Maybe wear gloves if you don't feel comfortable enough, and when you're using materials, especially like foam, make sure you hold onto it quite securely, because what can happen is the Dremel can actually spin and hit against the foam, so it bounces around everywhere because it's quite flimsy. It's also very messy, so make sure you're wearing clothes you don't care too much about and that you're in an area where you don't mind getting quite dirty. So I'm back now and I have my little dagger and my little Bayard all nice and rounded and sanded, and now it's time to add on the extra details. As you can see, especially with the dagger, the handle here has actually gotten quite small. Now I'm planning to put something else around it so it doesn't matter. Always take into consideration the dremeling, sanding part when planning weapons. I think it's a little bit similar in sewing when you leave a little bit for the seam allowance. Do the same thing with your weaponry, especially if you're going to be carving the edges in like that. Now the next part I'm going to do is I'm going to add on the extra details, make it a bit more 3D and, you know, make it look more like what they're meant to. Probably my biggest tip for this step is for adding on the extra details. Use masking tape to wrap around the part you want to work on. Draw the pattern onto the masking tape, take the masking tape off and put it on a piece of foam. And then you just cut it out and it will glue perfectly onto your weapon, and you have a template that will work. So I briefly mentioned that paper macheing weaponry is what I tend to do because it hardens up the prop and hides the foam texture, and it's quite easy and simple to use. And I will definitely do that for all my larger weaponry, but for these two I can't really be bothered and I don't really see the need. I'm actually going to prime them with Plastidip. And the reason I like to use that is, although it's actually used for mechanics, it fills in the texture of the foam and keeps things flexible, I suppose, so you don't have to worry about them bending and cracking the paint or the primer. The only problem is that it is quite expensive. Here at least it's about $30 a can, and you do generally have to do about 2 or 3 coats, more if you can. So although I loved using it, I think I'm mostly going to stick with Mod Podge and wood glue in the future just because it's a little bit cheaper. So I've just finished adding all of the extra details to the weaponry. So as you can see on the Bayard, I've just added the little bits on the corners and ends and a little bit on the middle as well. There's still lots of hot glue strands everywhere, of course. Now I'm just going to go give it one last Dremel just to clean up the edges a little bit and make sure that it will be all ready for priming. And then here's the dagger, which doesn't have as much. After I've Dremeled it once more and then added the little signal, I'm going to prime them with Mod Podge just to get it quite smooth and stuck together properly, and then I'm going to give it a few layers of Plastidip and then it will be ready to paint. So it's now been a few days since I last filmed, and that is because I had to prime my weapons. So what I ended up doing was first of all doing a layer of Mod Podge and then sanding that down a little, doing another layer of Mod Podge, and then I sprayed a layer of Plastidip. I think ideally I would have actually done at least another layer of Plastidip, but unfortunately I didn't have enough. So what I ended up doing was just doing one more layer of Mod Podge over the Plastidip, and now it is time to paint these bad boys. I actually ended up using quite a harsh sanding wheel on the Dremel, so it did turn out a little bit rough in places, but I mean, it's my first time making such small props, which you think would be easier, but you kind of don't have anywhere to hide in these. Definitely not horrible for my first go at all, and yeah, I think if I made them again they'd be even better, but for a first start I'm very happy and excited to get them painted. So in terms of painting my Bayard and knife, I just used regular acrylic paint that I had lying around. I didn't really end up doing anything too fancy, I just did all of the different colours and shades that the knife and Bayard have. So with the Bayard, I mixed up a slightly off black colour just for the base and then used a couple of layers of white and red. And then for the knife I used a bluey purple colour for the blade, some silver, and then just also did the crystal. Now if you wanted to, you could do some really intense weathering where you get the black and you either water it down a lot or just apply a little bit with a dry brush, and that can give really nice details to weaponry. But because I didn't really want them to look too harsh, I ended up outlining some parts in a black marker. This is just a really easy way and you have a lot of control, and then once I seal it in varnish, it'll hold its place. I did the same thing with a white paint marker as well. They're really fantastic for making things pop, just like the gem on the blade, and yeah, they're just really useful. So here they are all painted up now. They're not perfect paint jobs, I'm not gonna lie, but they're pretty good considering, and I think they'll look fantastic in photos. So I'm going to go and varnish these now, and then I will show you the finished product, and these two will be done. So as you can see now, I have finished varnishing my Keith blade and my Keith Bayard. Definitely would recommend varnishing it as a final step, especially if it's a glossy finish, just because it really gives it that nice shine, especially on the Bayard. It just makes it look much nicer in my opinion. So yeah, all I did was finish off the painting, I just did one layer of gloss on both sides, quite a thick layer, and they're done. So as you can see with Keith's dagger here, I just added on this fabric. It's not the exact colour, but it's what I had lying around, and then I also put just some really thin fleece stuff underneath just to give it a little bit more of bulk, just before I put this final layer of fabric on. And that's just hot glued on. You could super glue it if you wanted to be extra careful, but yeah, I can't say I was that fast. And yeah, I mean, one thing about making your own props is that you kind of learn what to do and not to do along the way, and that way every time you make something new you apply what you've learned and it will come out even better than before. Just quickly, I wanted to mention that I did cut out a few of the other Voltron weapons as well, as you would have seen in the first video. I will be getting to those at some point. I just mainly wanted to get these two done just because I really want to shoot Keith soon, and these are what he tends to have on him in the beginning. I also, of course, will end up making more Bayards, I'm sure, and I definitely know, once again, what I would do differently. Those will be coming in the future. I'll definitely document me working on the rest of my Voltron stuff, but for now, this is it, and thank you for following along with the progress. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask me, and share tips with each other as well. With every aspect of cosplay, there is never just one way to do something. There are a million different ways. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect right away. Just go with it, have a little bit of fun, and enjoy becoming your favourite characters. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye!